Be along on the football show. Lots of interesting games, and Charlotte Dunker will join us. She's been covering the Ronaldo situation, which you would think is coming to a head at Carrington over the next couple of days. Plus Matt Williams and Jerry Thornley on Monday Night Rugby. There is Leinster Munster to reflect on. Michael Cheika's double jobbing with the Lebanon at the Rugby League World Cup, and Finn Russell cut from the Scottish squad as well ahead of the November internationals catching the eye. So Matt Williams and Jerry Thornley with us after 8 o'clock. 53106 the text number. We are at Off the Ball on Twitter. Michael McCarthy is with us here in studio. Hello to you.
Hello, Joseph.
And Richie McCormack. Good evening.
Joe, how are you?
Yeah, very well. So Mick, this Sky Sports News broke this afternoon.
Yeah.
And catches the eye for numerous reasons. 2014, a long time ago now, the relationship started. Controversial one at its inception for Manny and the GAA family. Never popular, to say the least, to be behind a paywall. But I think found its groove very much, and the coverage was a genuine alternative to RTE. And now suddenly, as they kind of hit their straps, you feel as a production team in many ways, and well, it's over, just like that, it seems. So, and at a time where I know there is the condensed season that's been cited as one of the reasons, but there are more games to be shown than ever before. So, here we are.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Because we're hurtling towards a new rights deal, you know, in the next day or two, I think. And I think there was an assumption from all parties, and even from, like, you know, some of the information we've gotten that Richie will go through in a few minutes, that that includes Sky and the GAA, that we were going to, at least in terms of broadcast partners, remain largely the same. And we'll see where we go in terms of the details of who gets what. But the fact that Sky were out, I think, has come as a surprise, I think, to possibly everybody involved, from the way we understand it, you know. So where does that leave us? I'm not sure, but I do think it's a loss. You know, I mean, we can talk about what's going to come next, but in terms of, like, take the pundits alone. We've been bemoaning, or not even bemoaning, the fact that, just pointing out the fact that RTE have lost almost everybody off their coverage this year for one reason or another, be it retirement or going into management, and on Sky, I feel like they have, that pundit team has really evolved into where I think, like, Peter Canavan, for example, could be the best GA voice on television at the moment. Jim McGuinness obviously is Jim McGuinness, and he's always been brilliant. Kieran Donaghy is on there, you know, and then on the hurling side, like, Jamesy has made, you know, that screen his own in a way that's, like, absolutely phenomenal. He is so brilliant on that hurling coverage, and then JJ and Ollie back him up really well as well. Like, you know, they've got a good style to them, and also a very recognisable one. You kind of know what you're getting if you got a hurling or football match on Sky, and that's kind of gone. And RT don't have that. RT have a very much more, you don't know who you're getting when you tune in, and some days that can be a good thing, and other times it's like, again, it's not, in terms of appointment viewing, it's not the same.
By the way, the Jamesy innovation of at halftime showing the average positions on the pitch, things like that were really welcome and really good. So last year, just to put the numbers and facts out, so RTE showed 35 championship games last year, 17 of them were hurling, 18 football. So RTE 35 championship games, Sky showed 20. Now, of those 20, there were 14 exclusive. The 2 finals in hurling and football, and the 4 semi-finals were in both channels, so 14 exclusive.
So it was 29 and 14 if you kind of divide them up over where you couldn't see in terms of exclusive games. It
seems, I mean, Off the Ball's general understanding is that Sky were looking to show more games next year. They were looking for 16 exclusive championship matches, so that'd be up from 14, and to show 16 league games as well. And it seemed neither of which was possible in the eyes of the GAA, and so a deal hasn't been reached, and that's where we are. The reporting is that Premier Sports and Virgin seem unlikely at the moment. There was a report in one piece I read of the BBC upping its coverage, and I don't know, given the extra games on next year, shortened, condensed season as it may be, there are more games on. Is GAA Go suddenly going to become the centrepiece where you tune in to catch the majority of the games? Is that where we're headed?
I don't know about the majority. I would imagine that RT's offering would go up. I'm interested. I haven't heard anything about TG Carter, and I know that they've been looking to get into Championship a long time. But I do think that there's going to be more games on GAA Go, and I wonder what the reaction will be to that, because people have been talking about Sky as a pay-per-view offering for a long time, but it's not pay-per-view, it's pay TV. This would be a true pay-per-view system, and you know, the preliminary hurling quarterfinals were on there. We've had games on GAA Go over the last couple of years, and it is actually a very good addition.
Yeah.
But if it becomes not an addition and just a part of your watching of the games, if it's like Leinster first round games that wouldn't be shown elsewhere, and it's just that you can't make it to the game, you can pay the same amount to watch it on TV, and it would never have been broadcast otherwise, and they massively expand the amount of live games that they're showing, then I think that's absolutely fair enough. I think it's a serious question if it replaces Sky's 14 games and suddenly you're paying 15 quid a game for Leinster finals, Munster round robin games in the hurling, etc. You know, like that becomes a very, very different conversation then.
It's very interesting that it was just 2 games, like 2 championship games that were the crux of it and the crux of this deal breaking down, if that happens to be the case, and that they wanted more league games. But it does highlight something that I guess has come up a lot in discussion about the Sunday game, and the fact that now that Des is gone, like the whole show needs to be recalibrated. The whole way in which the GAA puts forward its media offerings needs a lot of rethinking. I was talking about, this isn't Alan Quinlan this morning talking about Munster, and the way that once Van Gran and Stephen Larkin went, that they needed to go root and branch and discover everything that was wrong there. Similarly, GAA need to really have a look at the antiquated ways in which they sell the rights and which they put forward their own materials, because it's not a 2022 offering to just hand them over, hand a certain number of games over to a TV channel or a TV outlet and go, here you go, and then to not handle the rights properly yourselves and to not handle the coverage that you own yourselves properly. And that's something that has been lacking, especially in the world of social media and especially in terms of online from their point of view for a while. So just to look out for somebody else to take those 14 games would be a pretty, I don't know, stilted way of looking at this as an approach for them going forward.
I don't think, just from what our off the ball's understanding is, I don't think it's necessarily just that it's the 2 games in the difference, or 3 games I think it was. I think the GAA wanted 13 games, Sky wanted 16, and that you would imagine that could have come to some sort of solution. But I think it was also in terms of quality of games. I don't think the GAA were willing to
give any guarantees.
Yeah, give any guarantees as to kind of what the selection would be, whereas obviously that wasn't the case in the past.
I think as well the initial hope of getting 16 league games then became 8, but again without a guarantee of the quality of league game. And so
exactly, yeah.
Sky obviously felt, well, we can't go into this without guarantees, I would presume. To your point, Richie, I agree with you in many ways. There's the live aspect and how the live games are shown, and that's very, very important. And it will be interesting to see to what extent are they all on RTE. Do BBC step up and show more? Will GAA become a much bigger part of the conversation? But the highlights conversation is the big dilemma. Like, I mean, we kind of talked about quite a bit last week on the back of Des Cahill leaving the Sunday game. That show just has no room to breathe. You know, there are just so many games on now. The season is very condensed. That one highlights show on a Sunday, I think Des Cahill said it in an interview over the summer, almost is not fit for purpose. That it's impossible to have a conversation. And you're also asking pundits, I would think, to talk about games they haven't seen at all for 2-3 minutes tops. No real conversation can break out. You don't really get a great sense of the game because there isn't enough time to show highlights of everything. There's now, a real demand that camogie and ladies football is shown as well in these highlight shows. So there, how they tackle that one is also going to be interesting. And I suppose the obvious answer is some kind of a midweek show as well, or there's match of the day and match of the day too. But now would be a good time to figure that one out ahead of next year and the new championship format for sure, Rich.
Which one are you presenting?
I've said I'm doing both, or I'm doing none.
Fair enough. No, all the live games, yeah, all of that. To be honest with you, all of that, because their online offering and their the way they've handled their highlights, both in terms of the Sunday game and how much you try and cram into that space, doesn't work in the modern era. And there's definitely scope to do something more with that. There's definitely scope to package their highlights online better than they already do, and that is a way. Because the Sky deal, let's not forget, was spoken about in terms of trying to broaden the audience of GAA and trying to maybe get it into UK homes. I think it was tried before with Channel 4 and never worked then. It was tried with Sky, hasn't worked in that respect. The way you do it is not by TV rights deals. The way you do it is by infiltrating social media in ways that canny brands do. And that's the way they need to go about it now, rather than just looking at, well, who has the TV deal, who has the radio deal, let them have at it, and let's just crack on ourselves. They need to be more clever in how they get their stuff and get their product, because it is a product, and I know it's ugly to talk about it in those terms, but it's a product. They're selling it in those terms. They need to take care of it in those terms, and need to make sure that it's presented in the best possible light and has the best chance of the most eyeballs on it, and that's just not the case right now.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think regardless, and it must be so, it's a disappointing day for everybody involved with Sky and the staff, and, you know, like, we're thinking of those guys, because it's terrible news when something like that happens. But certainly there is the big frustration. So, yeah, the point I was going to say is that the live coverage will be handled somewhere along the line, and that's important. But I mean, I definitely have had my fill of highlights shows where I'm listening to pundits who haven't watched a game, and they're talking for 2-3 minutes and just saying things like, oh, well, but you know, like, Offaly have always had lovely footballers down the years. You know, that's what the chat is for 2 minutes.
And it's kind of true, no fault of their own, because you can't watch everything.
Nobody's fault. Sorry, in Match of the Day, they do it brilliantly. I don't know how they do it sometimes, where they have, like, all of the screens on, all of the games. They've, you know, endless resources, and the teams work on each game and they pick stuff out as they go. And that's just not possible, I think, when there are so many games on across the weekend. But if we could get to a point... I mean, how many punditry teams can you roll out across the night? Each of them watch 2 games each. You can't do that either. But in a dream world,
maybe it's not trying to cover everything on the Sunday, and it is having that sort of selection. And maybe it's a football show on one day and a hurling show on 1 week, a football show on Sunday and a hurling show on the Monday, and maybe it's 4 pundits. And maybe they've all watched, you know, 2 of the games each or whatever, especially in the early stages of the championship. And that would be, I think, the best way to do it. Like, it just, again, because what is it offering us?
I know, because when I hear
especially in GAA, it's not like football. You can watch the goals in football and have a sense of something.
Totally.
If you're seeing a lovely score from someone and they're 15 points down.
Yeah, when I hear a pundit saying, well, just based on the highlights, Des.
Yeah.
That's just no
highlights
good to me
are
as a viewer.
often 3 minutes. Yeah.
Like, they could have had 25 wides and you saw 3 lovely points kicked. You know, you need someone who's watched the game in full to give any kind of analysis.
Yeah.
And that is very difficult. And that's actually not a major criticism of the output. That's just, man, it's a difficult reality. Yeah. When there's 10 games across 15 games across a day or across a weekend. So
I don't know. I just sometimes I just wonder what we're looking for from these shows. Like, was it so bad maybe when it was like
strong opinion?
Maybe it was strong opinion, and it was like the non-TV game is what we see 10 minutes of. They show a little bit of the TV game and they talk about that because they've all seen it already. Yeah. And then ultimately we just see the scores from other games. Like, we don't need big long discussions about them.
I think you can kind of go 2 ways. They've and some would say it's to their credit, they've gone down a direction of saying, well, we're going to do really great analysis, but then the highlight show can't deliver that because of the logistics.
Yeah.
And what it used to give you, even if it didn't give you cutting edge analysis of every single game, it gave you 3 big moments, talking points, really strong opinion. Jerry Loughnane talking about the fat legs and the Offaly lads. You know, these kind of moments, which, you know, just have had their sell-by date. I don't know, but they'd be like, you know, these things are being said and it's strong opinion. He's a disgrace.
Keane and Neville, like we used to talk about the Irish TV being so far ahead of English in terms of real conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like we've gone one way when the English have kind of taken leave from us. You know what I mean? We always talked about Graham Souness would be sitting there not knowing what was going on Irish TV. But it was the same in GAA and it was the same in rugby. And we've gone the other way. And maybe that's okay. But we would never have the type of argument that Keane and Neville had on... And a lot of people didn't like that, Joe. A lot of people didn't like it.
Yeah.
I personally think that's, as you know, what else do I want? Do I really want analysis of Manchester United and Chelsea to the nth degree? I feel I can get that elsewhere straight after the game. I loved it.
Yeah.
We're not getting that on Irish TV anymore, and the GAA no less so than anyone else. Is that wrong? Or I don't know. Like that's a discussion. A lot of people will be listening here will say, thank God that we had enough of that guff over the years and arguing for the sake of it, and certain pundits not letting other people talk, and you know,
no, for sure,
it's all gone.
It wasn't everyone's taste at all. No, for sure. Like there's that thing of trying to satisfy everyone as well. It's difficult. We should press on with the news round. It is brought to you with Gillette in association with Movember Effortless Shave Magnificent Mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. So we've touched on the Sky News. That was your top story, Richie, so we've stolen your thunder there. However, Shamrock Rovers,
yeah, they could well be crowned SSE Electricity Premier Division champions tonight without kicking a ball. Anything other than a win for Derry City away to Sligo Rovers tonight will see the Hoops earn a third straight title. Elsewhere this evening, Shelbourne welcome UCD to Tolka Park, and both of those games kick off at 7:45. Both West Ham and Bournemouth are hoping to avoid a third straight Premier League game without a win tonight. They meet at the London Stadium, and kick-off there is at 8 p.m.
Tyke Furlong?
Yeah, he's a doubt for Ireland ahead of the autumn internationals, although Leo Cullen today saying something towards the opposite direction of that, saying that his ankle should be okay. The tight head rolled his ankle in training on Thursday, which led to him withdrawing from the team that beat Munster at the Aviva. Furlong is going to have the injury assessed this week by the Ireland medical staff. Josh van der Flier, Jameson Gibson Park and Hugo Keenan will all continue their comebacks under IRFU supervision this week. All Blacks legend Kieran Reid was an interested onlooker at Leinster training today, and head coach Cullen explained his snooping around.
Well, he was at the game on Saturday, so yeah, he was floating around. He has a few different connections here. Obviously, Andrew Goodman from the Crusaders, Michael Alalatso from the Crusaders as well. Jason Jenkins, they would have played in Japan together with Toyota Verblitz. So, so yeah, no, there's some good connections there. Obviously, Stuart has done some pieces with Kieran as well. So yeah, no, it was great to have him in the building and just sort of sharing some of his insights into the game. You know, particularly when you have a young group, because you know, for us as coaches, you can try to message the players, but you know, the level of respect that he has is just at a different level altogether. So, for all that he's achieved in the game, you know, won 2 World Cups. So he's a phenomenal player and leader. So to have him here sharing some of his insights was nicely timed.
Now then, Rich, John Ryan, welcome back.
Yeah, he's back at Munster following his release by troubled Premiership club Wasps. The prop only left the province in the summer, but he signed a 3-month deal to provide cover for the injured Stephen Archer. Munster have also signed centre Ollie Morris from Worcester. He'll stay until the end of this season. Meanwhile, Tom Ahern, Calvin Nash and Finian Wycherley have all signed 2-year contract extensions with the province.
Now, this story around the FAI broke this afternoon. You might fill us in.
Yeah, the first came the press release from the FAI saying that they had ended their deal with GAA Sports, but GAA Sports, GACC, say they're taking legal advice after the FAI terminated its deal with the kit supplier. The FAI only signed a 6-year extension with the company in 2019, but they announced today that they're ending the deal, quote, in accordance with the terms of the agreement. However, GAA say they rejected the termination, claiming it is agenda-fueled and malicious. GAA, previously known as Topline, have supplied Ireland's kit since 1994.
In happier news for the FAI, we'll obviously watch that develop, and Dan McDonnell will be in on the football show tomorrow, so he might fill us in on some of those details. The kick-off times for Ireland's World Cup matches announced, and they're good. They will suit the viewing public over here, which is always the concern when you're on the other side of the world.
Yeah, very, very palatable considering what they could have been. The kick-off times confirmed for Ireland's matches in Australia next year. The opening game against the hosts in Sydney will kick off at 10 a.m. Irish time. That's on July 20th. The second group match against Canada, that's in Perth, has a 1 p.m. start Irish time, while the final game against Nigeria is underway at 11 o'clock. That's in Brisbane. All 3 games kick off at 8 p.m. in the respective local times.
Michael and Kerry saying there should be magazine shows right across the week, separate highlight shows, men's, women's, hurling, football, All-Ireland, Tailteann Cup, plenty of room and appetite for it. James in Moat says GAA hoping to break new territories, a pipe dream. Large swathes of Ireland don't care about hurling, for starters. I mean, there was that wait till everybody sees hurling dream in 2014, and some initial tweets from Joey Barton. Have you seen this? You know, it's incredible, but I don't know if it did quite take over.
Well, it's not gonna get you into the sport. I think you can have an appreciation and a like for it, and as Texter said, half of Ireland has that when it comes to hurling, you know. A lot of sport is what you grow up with and what you've watched all your life, rather than coming across something as an adult that doesn't translate for most people. It's a fair point. I mean, I never thought that, and as much, I'm sure the GAA would honestly tell you that it was a big part of the Sky deal. I never thought it was a huge reason for it. It was just another broadcaster coming in with something different, and look, it was a byproduct that it was available. And look, I mean, it's not always about who's watching it in England who doesn't ever watch GAA before. There's an awful lot of Irish people who live in the UK that it became, look, it was always a deal for like rights for the GAA in the UK and in other territories, but it became a lot easier for people for a long time.
Dispute over that. I remember having Paul Rouse in, and we were talking about it, and he had clocked the numbers, and that deal made it trickier financially, more expensive.
Okay, because people could just buy their individual, like Satanta deal or whatever it was at the time.
Yeah, it wasn't like they were delighted with that over in the UK.
Okay, fair
the way
enough.
they had been doing it. But look, I know
Maybe they're into football as well.
Yeah, I'm to be fair, I'm not over there. I'm not quite sure how it all worked out. But that was definitely a point made at the time in answer to the sense that this will make it much easier and much more straightforward in the UK.
But I did think most of it was about, it was following on from TV3 at the time, their share of the rights, you know, and that it was taking away RT's monopoly, and it felt like it was just the follow on from that, and it was these games that were available outside of RT's package went to Sky for these number of years that it has, the 8 years, and I thought it was always more to do with just another offering rather than necessarily this kind of like expats or growing the game.
No, totally.
issue.
Yeah, that wasn't. I don't think that was the primary driver. So there's a report into Qatar, Richie, on the eve of the World Cup.
Yeah, it's found that members of Qatar's LGBTQ plus community were being detained and physically abused by the country's security services as recently as last month. Human Rights Watch has highlighted a number of cases where gay people were ill-treated while in detention. Homosexuality is illegal in the country that will host the World Cup from next month, and the Qatari government has called the allegations unequivocally false.
There is news expected in Donegal then this evening.
There is, first to that though, news of Aston Villa, because it seems as if they have themselves a new manager, sacking Steven Gerrard, of course, in the wake of that defeat to Fulham last week. Fabrizio Romano reporting that sources close to Villarreal feel that Unai Emery will leave the club in the coming hours, and he is expected even to accept the role as Aston Villa manager. Talks are at final stages, with Villa prepared to pay the €6 million release clause for the former Arsenal boss.
Interesting.
So there is that.
Interesting. Do you want to give me an angry fan reaction, or what do you want to do?
There's no angry fan reaction. I'm surprised. I saw this like 4 seconds before Richie just brought it up there, because we got a text about it, and I just went to look it up. Yeah, I'm surprised. I thought they were going to go after the sporting manager, who, look, I don't think was interested and seems like a next big thing. I never even fully learned his name. Unfortunately, it all happened and went so quick. But Unai Emery has tended to do better when, you know, Spanish has been the first language of the dressing room, I think, is something that people thought was, you know, fair to say after he went to Villarreal after Arsenal. But good record. I don't know, as I don't actually have a full thought on this yet. But yeah, it's someone that we know is a good coach and could do a good job there. But it is also, I would say, his record in England wasn't spectacular. So
no, it wasn't. There was a degree of rehabilitation about winning the Europa League and doing a good job at Villarreal. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Look, you'll be hard to beat. You won't concede many goals. It'll be very sensible football you can look forward to.
But they won 4-0 at the weekend and played really attacking football, and, you know,
the shackles were off.
They're
going back on.
I know.
4-5-1.
Do you know what? Isn't that terrible that I don't even know? I don't even remember that much specifically about Unai Emery's, you know, tactical game plan.
Sensible.
But my first thought was negative.
Yeah,
as in not negative to
negative
approach.
Safety first.
Yeah.
Okay. Buckle up. You're going to love the next 18 months. So
pragmatic.
Yes.
Good evening.
So Donegal, then, we're expecting to get word on the new management team this evening, is it?
Yeah, I'm just after checking. They're not through yet, but it should come tonight that Donegal's footballers should finally have a new manager, or a new management team. That is, the combination of Aidan O'Rourke and Paddy Carr will be put to a county committee meeting tonight for ratification. Donegal without a boss, of course, since Declan Bonner stepped down back in July.
Now, it's not every day this island produces a world number one in anything, let alone for the 9th time.
Yeah, Rory McIlroy back to world number one, having retained his CJ Cup title last night. 3 consecutive rounds of 67 in South Carolina saw McIlroy top the field on 17 under par, a shot clear of Kurt Kitayama. Last year's CJ Cup marked an upturn in McIlroy's form, and he was emotional after last night's win.
You know, this tournament last year was the start of me trying to build myself back up to this point. I had a really rough Ryder Cup. You know, I've talked about that at length. I think I was outside the top 10 in the world. You know, it's not a position that I'm used to being in. And I think just the steady climb back up to the summit of world golf and what it takes, right? What it takes, and it's not just me. It's it's everyone that's a part of my team. It's not a solo effort, and I just think about everyone that's made a difference in my life. Obviously not over the last 12 months, but ever. But it's just thinking over that last 12 months, there's a lot of people that deserve a lot of the plaudits, and I'm the one that sits up here and takes them. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people don't know about, and all of that stuff combined is just as important as what I do out there trying to get these wins.
It's been an extraordinary turnaround, and to get to world number one without winning a major, which offers a ton of ranking points, obviously speaks volumes. He's been exceptional. He's turned it around in a way I wasn't so sure he was going to. I was getting very worried about 18 months ago. I thought the fire was dwindling and there were just unsolvable issues with putting and increasingly wedge play. And wedge play really costs you at Augusta. People talk about his putting, and that's going to be a big issue, but you can't not be in control of your wedge play at Augusta, because he'd be off every green. And Nick Fallow used to always say that it's his wedge play at Augusta that's killing him. And then the putting was on the floor. I mean, there were times he was the 200th ranked putter out there, and that's a difficult thing to sort out. Like, it's such a weird science, putting. It's not even a science, it's an art, and he has sorted them both out, and consistently so. It's not just that he's streakily good now and has good weeks and bad weeks. He's always very consistent with his wedge play and with his putting, and he feels more complete than the kid who just came out hot and excited and free-flowing and won those 4 majors in the blink of an eye. He's now a ton of scar tissue. He's had to work through things, figure things out very consciously, and he now feels more resilient, and he'll be able to win various kinds of majors. So I'd say last couple of years you could see him like blitzing a major maybe and winning just on sheer talent if he had a good 4 days, whereas now I think we're looking at a period where, much like this year, where he was in the top 10 in every single major and had the best cumulative score across the 4 majors, I think now that is going to be Rory next year. I think he'll be in the top 5 in every major, and there's a good chance he wins one. He just needs a little bit of luck.
Yeah, because that's what I was saying to you earlier, like, it just sometimes that can happen, that it just doesn't come together. Majors are hard to win for loads of different reasons, and luck is a huge part of them. But I find it interesting that it's his 9th time as world number one. I was sort of surprised to see that. But it is, I think, the first time that I think we can almost categorically say he's the best golfer in the world at the moment. Like, it feels to me like this has been 9-10 months of Rory McIlroy being the best out there. And it's built up to this. Now, I'm sure we know he's been among the best at all times, but I don't know whether he's always been as far ahead of everybody else as he's been this season.
I think potentially, to be fair, he has, like in 14, and what you would say then was if he played his best, he was the best. Nobody could catch him. Whereas now he's even
consistency.
He's got a B game that's so much better than his B game of old. So, and he can win in different ways. It doesn't just. I can see him now winning. Look, he didn't against Cam Smith at the Open, but you can see him winning tight tussles as opposed to winning by 8 shots, which he did in 2 majors. So it's just more complete, more mature. He's 33. Phil Mickelson hadn't won a major at this age, so you now think this, all going well, touch wood, no new Tiger Woods emerging. He has a hell of a shot at getting to 6, surpassing Faldo as the best European golfer,
Yeah, and look, not to state the obvious as well, but for it to come on the back of a year when his off-course work has been so prominent as well, and the way he's been the voice of the PGA Tour and standing up to Live Golf, and the voice of reason in some ways for golf in general, in a sport that doesn't often lend itself to voices of reason. The fact that has coincided with probably the most consistent or best form of his career is amazing, because I think if you were to ask me 2 years ago, or I was to ask you 2 years ago, is Rory McIlroy someone who gets distracted by off-course stuff or by the different things? We might throw that at him. Maybe it wasn't fair, but I think that was a perception, and for him to be able to do both at the same time this year is remarkable.
Yeah, I think he's thriving on it. He's a show-off.
He is, yeah.
He's always been a show-off in the best possible way. He's a real, look at me, look what I can do. He's an alpha, and so I think everyone talking about him as almost the leader of the PGA Tour, which in effect he is. I think that's an extra bit of swagger.
Piles the pressure on as well, though, so it's interesting the way he takes it.
No, it's true, because I mean, like, you look like a fool if you're in the media shooting your mouth out every week and then you're shooting 15 over, because then everyone's going to say, well, concentrate on what's important. So yeah, it is impressive. We're pretty much out of time. Once we started talking golf, Richie, you were done for.
I know, yeah. Interested passerby. It's grand.
Thank you very much. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Mick McCarthy, thank you.
Cheers.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
Kelly Lewis, who's in Tipperary, answered the call with the right number to